Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotara Shata Shishimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotara Shata Shishimad, His Divine Grace, Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Thakura Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande. All glories to the Assemble of devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the Assemble of devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the Assemble of devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shishi Guru and Gauranga. All glories to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Grantara Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki, Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. We are reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 7, Text 4. We don't have it on the board, so maybe you can look in your phones. Astrakshit Bhagavan Vishvam. Astrakshit Bhagavan Vishvam. Gunamayatma Mayaya. Gunamayatma Mayaya. Taya samstapayatyetat. Taya samstapayatyetat. Bhuya pratyapi dasyati. Bhuya pratyapi dasyati. Astrakshit Bhagavan Vishvam. Gunamayatma Mayaya. Taya samstapayatyetat. Bhuya pratyapi dasyati. Astrakshit Bhagavan Vishvam. Gunamayatma Mayaya. Taya samstapayatyetat. Bhuya pratyapi dasyati. Astrakshit Bhagavan Vishvam. Gunamayatma Mayaya. Taya samstapayatyetam. Bhuya pratyapi dasyati. Astrakshit Bhagavan Vishvam. Gunamayatma Mayaya. Taya samstapayatyetat. Bhuya pratyapi dasyati. Astrakshit Bhagavan Vishvam. Gunamayatma Mayaya. Taya samstapayatyetat. Bhuya pratyapi dasyati. Astrakshit Bhagavan Vishvam. Gunamayatma Mayaya. Taya samstapayatyetat. Bhuya pratyapi dasyati. Astrakshit Bhagavan Vishvam. Gunamayatma Mayaya. Taya samstapayatyetat. Bhuya pratyapi dasyati. Wanna check it out? Astrakshit Bhagavan Vishvam. Gunamayatma Mayaya. taya samstapayatyetat bhuya pratyapidashyati. Astrakshit caused to create. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Vishvam, the universe. Gunamaya, endowed with three modes of material nature. Atma, self. Mayaya, by the potency. Taya, by her. Samstapayati, maintains. Etat, oh this. Bhuya, then again. Pratyapidasyati, conversely dissolves also. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. By His self-sheltered potency of the three modes of material nature, the Lord has caused the creation of this universe. By her, He maintains the creation and conversely dissolves it again and again. Purport. This cosmic universe is created by the Lord for those living entities who are carried away by the illusory thought of becoming one with Him by imitation. The three modes of material nature are for the further bewilderment of the conditioned souls. The conditioned living entity, bewildered by the illusory energy, considers himself a part of the material creation due to forgetfulness of his spiritual identity. And thus he becomes entangled in material activities life after life. This material world is not for the purpose of the Lord Himself, but is for the conditioned souls who wanted to be controllers due to misuse of their God-gifted minute independence. Thus the conditioned souls are subjected to repeated birth and death. Again, translation. By His self-sheltered potency of the three modes of material nature, the Lord has caused the creation of this universe. By her, He maintains the creation and conversely dissolves it again and again. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Lord, He's always transcendentally situated when we are speaking about the material world. He is not directly involved in the material creation. And sometimes it is given the example of someone smelling a flower. Yes, you can say through the fragrance that is coming from the flower, he has connection, but actually his connection is indirect. So in the same way, we can say that the Supreme Lord is the ultimate cause for the whole material creation, but he is not directly involved in it. And also, as Srila Prabhupada is saying in the purport, this material world is not for the purpose of the Lord Himself, but is for the conditioned souls who wanted to be controllers due to misuse of their God-given minute independence. So Krishna, He has His own world, the spiritual world, which is from most perspective much better than this one. And he is happy there. He has his friends, he has his family there, he has his pastimes. He is totally satisfied being there with his close people. He doesn't need the material creation. But as we understand from Bhagavad Gita, in 15th chapter there is one verse. It says, Dvav imao purushao loke, kshara chakshara evacha, kshara sarvani bhutani, kutasto akshara uchyate. So this verse is explaining that there are two kinds of living entities, kshara and akshara, or fallible and infallible. And all living entities which are in this material world, they are fallible. Why? Because they decided to use improperly their minute independence. And all living entities which are in the spiritual world, which are always living in union with the Supreme Lord, they are akshara, or they are infallible. So what means to live in union with the Supreme Lord? We have two understandings. We have this idea of becoming the Supreme Lord, which we don't accept, and which is unnatural for the living entity, because the living entity can never be God, or he cannot be even equal to God, he cannot be better than God. There is one interesting name of Krishna, which is Asama Urdhva. It's a name of Krishna, which means Asama means no equal, and Urdhva means higher. So nobody is equal to him, and nobody is better or higher than him. So he is the top, and even nobody can come closer to him. So this idea that some spiritualists are trying to achieve, to get one with the Supreme, to merge into the Supreme, practically it's impossible. Theoretically it's possible in our minds that we can achieve such a situation of existence, but actually, practically it's impossible. And that's why we have this famous verse from 10th canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, which is saying, Yenye ravindaksha vimuktamaninas tvai astabhavat avishuddha budaya. What is their main problem? That although they may think that they achieve perfection by getting union with the Supreme, they are still impure. What is their impurity? Avishuddha budaya. Their intelligence is still impure, because still they are thinking they are independent controllers from the Lord, and they are independent enjoyers from the Lord. And because of that, aroha krichrena param padam tata padantyada nadrita yusmat angreha. Because they don't want to take complete shelter in the activities which are meant to satisfy the Supreme Lord in devotional service, gradually they go again down and down and down and down. Aroha krichrena param padam tada. So this is the way how we cannot become one with the Lord. But there is a way how we can become one with the Lord. And this is the idea of becoming with the Lord one as interests. Basically, you don't have any separate ideas what is the purpose of the creation and what is your purpose in this creation than the idea that the Lord has. If we have the same idea that the whole creation is meant to give pleasure to the Lord, and He is the supreme controller, He is the supreme enjoyer, and He is the best friend of all living entities, then we are living always constantly in union with the Supreme Lord. It's not that we are losing our individuality. No, still we will be individuals, and one may like to serve more the Supreme Lord in this way, and someone else will want to like to do something else for the Supreme Lord. So this individuality will be there, but we won't have the idea that the creation is meant for our enjoyment, for our pleasure, which is predominant now at the moment. Even those living entities in the universe which are pious and they have idea to serve the Supreme Lord, still they have this idea that whatever I have, yes, partially is meant for the pleasure of the Lord, but I have my quota. And my quota is meant for me. And this is the beginning of the material existence, that we see that there is something which is meant for us and is not meant for the pleasure of Krishna. We see that we have a separate way to become happy apart from the service of the Lord. And when we are speaking of the material world and the spiritual world, unavoidably one of the questions that come is, as we were speaking a little bit yesterday with Maharaj, how it happened that we were in the spiritual world and then we appeared in the material world, which is a very deep and very serious question. And many great philosophers and many great thinkers, they were trying to answer this question, which is not an easy thing. But what I wanted to share is, some years ago I heard a seminar given by Suhotra Maharaj. He was speaking on this topic, and he presented an interesting idea, because generally we understand that in the material world there is Maya, or there is illusion, but in the spiritual world, illusion as it is exists in the material world, it does not exist. So what was the reason initially the living entity to come to the material world? If we are in the spiritual world and we are totally immersed in thoughts of Krishna, in the ecstasy of Krishna consciousness, in the service of the Lord, how it happened that we came here? One interesting idea that Suhotra Maharaj was giving in this seminar is the idea for the disturbance of rasa. What that means? Well, every living entity in the spiritual world, he has his personal connection with Krishna. Like some living entities, they serve Krishna as his friends, or as his parents, or as his beloved, different kinds of relationships. And the idea is that everybody is serving the Lord, and he's not criticizing any other servants of the Lord. This is the ideal stage of existence, of consciousness. But he was explaining, sometimes some servant of the Supreme Lord in the spiritual world may become the reason for creating a disturbance between the relationships between the Supreme Lord and some other eternal servant of the Lord. So in this case, this eternal servant may start thinking a little bit, let's say, not completely in a well-wishing way in the direction of this living entity. And then this can become a reason for degradation. And the example that Maharaj was giving was this past time with Akrura, how Akrura, who is very close and dear servant of the Supreme Lord, pure devotee, he goes to Vrindavan to take Krishna and bring him to Mathura, which apparently was like nothing wrong, because anyway Krishna appeared on earth in order to fulfill his mission, and part of his mission was to kill the demons. paritranaya sadhunam vinashacha dushkritam. Krishna is always coming to protect his devotees and to kill the demons. So, that was part of the mission. He had to go out of Vrindavan and do this. But then, some of the associates of Krishna in Vrindavan, they were not at all happy from this. And they even tried to stop the chariot of Akrura physically. And still, Akrura started and took out Krishna and Balaram. So, because of this dissatisfaction in the minds of the eternal associates of the Supreme Lord, later Akrura, he got involved in a strange situation. There was one special stone, it was called Syamantaka, which had the ability to produce amazing quantities of gold. And it was possession of one king. But then somehow or other, two other personalities decided that they want to take the stone from the king and kill the king. And somehow Akrura, who is a pure devotee and very pious living entity with very good character, he got involved in this affair. And it was a whole thing. But the point is that he, a pure devotee of the Lord, somehow he was involved in this strange activities of killing a king and stealing this jewel. And after that, Krishna was, some people, they started speaking that actually Krishna killed the king, because before that Krishna one time mentioned to the king that actually this special jewel, we have to give it to the head of our dynasty, King Ugrasena. He should be his property. So everybody thought, oh, Krishna said this and now he did it. He was stealing this stone to give it to King Ugrasena. So anyway, it was a whole thing. But just the point was that because of dissatisfaction of the eternal associate of the Supreme Lord, Akrura, he got involved in this whole conspiracy. So in the same way, Maharaj was explaining that there are three levels of fall down, we can say, or coming from the living entity from the spiritual world to the material world. And the first level is very, very subtle. Actually, it's not that the living entity sees Maya in Krishna, but actually he just, in his heart appears the desire to want to serve the Supreme Lord, not exactly the way how Supreme Lord wants, but the way how he wants. And this already brings some small tinge of selfishness, because it's not exactly how Krishna wants, but it's little bit as I want to serve him. Yes, I want to serve the Supreme Lord, I'm his servant, but I'm going to do it the way how I think it's the best. So already there is some kind of selfishness. So Maharaj was explaining, once this happens, the living entity has to come in the material world and take the position of Brahma. Why? Because Brahma is 100% servant of the Supreme Lord, but he has this desire to create the universe. And the living entity can try to do that. So basically that means that each one of us, when we are coming in the material universe, we were Brahma, and we were in charge for the whole thing, we were the controllers. And then Brahma has a choice. If he keeps his mentality of pure devotion, after he is doing this service of creating the universe, he goes back to the spiritual world. But if not, if he continues to develop this separatist mentality of having the idea of independent existence from the Lord, then he goes one level down. And this living entity becomes something like a big demigod, like Indra, or some of the main demigods like Vayu or Agni or something like that. And then, even if then the living entity don't decide to make again big change and come to the standard of 100% pure devotion, then it goes one level down. And this is already, you can be everything. Like you can be a human being, you can be animal even, you can be a plant, and so on and so on and so on. So basically, we are entering the big Maya, the big illusion of the material existence. So as we said, this world is meant for us to try to fulfill our desires which are not connected with the Supreme Lord. But there is a second reason for the creation of this material world, and it is to try to change our mentality. Okay, we are here, we want to fulfill our material desires. Why we call them material? Because they are not connected with Krishna. If the desire is called, it's connected with the Supreme Lord, it's called spiritual. But if the desire is not connected with the Supreme Lord, then it becomes material. As we have this definition in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Atmendriya priti vancha tarabalikam, Krishnendriya priti icha dare premanam. The moment we are thinking how to satisfy ourselves, our senses, this is known as kama or lust. This is material consciousness. And the moment that we are thinking how to give pleasure to the senses of Krishna, Krishnendriya priti icha dare premanam. This is known as love of God or spiritual activities. So the idea is, okay, we are here, we can try to satisfy our material desires, whatever we have, separate desires from the service of Krishna. But then there is a second reason, more important reason, and this is to try to change our mentality, our consciousness, our way of thinking, from material consciousness to make it again Krishna consciousness, and then to achieve liberation. Liberation, the real liberation means to revive our connection with the Supreme Lord, to revive our original consciousness of eternal servants of Krishna, eternal servants of God. And there is very famous verse from Bhagavatam, beginning of Bhagavatam, which says, Dharmasya hi apavargasya. The real goal of spiritual activities, of religion, of dharma, is apavarga, to get liberated from the material world, from the material existence. The goal of dharma is not to develop economically. This is what this verse is saying, which I think is a very important point, because most of the people who are religious or spiritual in this material world, we can see that more or less their motivation bows up to trying to get better economical situation. And they are intelligent enough and pious enough to understand that, okay, if I want like better economical situation, more money, more happiness, I have to approach God. They have this piety. But actually, Bhagavatam, which is trying to propose the idea of pure religion, pure spiritual teachings, says no, actually the whole idea of spirituality is not to improve your material situation. The whole idea of spirituality is to get rid of the material situation and material consciousness. Of course, we are doing this gradually by first engaging our material activities, our material skills in service of Krishna, but then we should try always to keep in our mind this pure idea that our activities are meant just to give pleasure to the Supreme Lord. Our ideas are not meant to make us happy separately from the Supreme Lord. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have some questions or some comments. Yes.
So, can I have some questions?
Yes.
No, I can project my voice. Right? Can you not hear me?
Strong. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna
Krishna
Krishna,
Hare Hare Rama.
Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Thank you very much for giving class. I appreciate you. So I have two questions, if I may. The other day we were talking about our free will and how that was like we have to have our free will. Is that the in this verse where he's talking about we have that God-gifted minute independence? Is that our free will?
Yes, that's
Okay.
our free will.
I see.
So it's very minute, but it's there. Why is very minute? Because we are very minute by nature. The living entity is extremely small. But the Supreme Lord is giving him this choice that he can go right or left. And once means he can turn his face in the direction of Krishna and be conscious of Krishna, or he can turn his face opposite. That's our choice.
And the second part of my question is just kind of just something I noticed. It's interesting how her is not capital, but he is in this verse. I just think that's interesting because it's like by her, he maintains. And I mean her and he, I think like Radha and Krishna, it's interesting, just interesting. I don't know if that's only in the phone or if that's in the book as well.
Yeah, because philosophically we are trying to show that there is difference between God or the source of everything, the source of all energies, and his energies. Although when it comes to relationships, we don't make a difference. Like, for example, we have some big personality, let's say the mayor of New York. This is the mayor of New York, like you write the mayor with big letters. But then if you have to deal with his wife or his kids, you don't differentiate. It's the same, you put them on the same level. Otherwise he'll become offended. So in the same way, when it comes to practical dealings, we don't make difference between the Supreme Lord, his energies and his devotees, his paraphernalia. We deal the same way to all of them. But when it comes to philosophical explanations, just to show that God, he's above everything else, we have to show it somehow. So that's a way to show it.
Thank you, that was a good answer. But still, it's kind of just an interesting thing. I
Yes, definitely, it's an interesting thing.
Haribol.
Matanga. Okay.
Can I ask first?
Yes, sure.
Thank you. Yeah, you mentioned that the Brahma is a position, right? So is everybody coming through the position of Brahma to this world?
It appears so.
So how does it work then? So from Brahma comes, I have it here, comes Swayambhuva Manu, and then his three daughters, and yeah, how does all? So everybody goes first through a Brahma position, and then so that means that Brahma is a very short-lived position. So that position must be taken over, else because there's only one Brahma in this material universe.
It means that the creation is so that the time is working in such a way that there was creation of in innumerable universes so many times that each and every living entity that we see in this universe, it has his time to be the head manager of a universe for 100 years. And these 100 years, they are not human 100 years. These are 100 years of Brahma. Which means when our desire come to do something for the Supreme Lord, but to do it separately, we had this opportunity to create a universe. Of course, this is only the secondary creation of the universe, but still, you can use this creative energy, this desire that you have. And then we had our own universe, and we had to make the whole thing from scratch. Create everything, all the planetary systems, the different living entities, like the demigods, the human beings, the demoniac forms of life, everything. And then we had to maintain the universe, try to work it out. Because we know that every day, again and again, Brahma has to partially create the universe again. Because after every day of Brahma, there is partial destruction of the universe. So when he wakes up, he sees, oh, this is not maintained properly, this is not maintained, so he has to recreate some part of the universe. And we are doing this for 100 years. And after, at the end of this life, we could say, well, it was nice, but it's not so much fun as in the spiritual world, so I'll just get rid of this and just go back. That was the one choice. But apparently, if we are here, that means we did the other choice. We said, I like it. I want to do it one more time. I think next time it will be even better. And then, okay, become a mouse again. We had to continue going down the stairs in this universe.
But what I really meant to ask is the functions that come afterwards. So you have Swayambhuva Manu, you have the daughters.
Yes.
So they before were also Brahma.
Yes, correct.
So where do they come from? Because there can only be one Brahma in one material universe.
Yeah,
so
they were in the position of Brahma. Previous creations of the universe, this universe or other universe, because there are many universes. I have one speculation, maybe I can discuss it sometimes with you, Maharaj, that maybe there are 4 milliards and 320 million universes, maybe. I can tell you why I came to this conclusion. Let's see if you're going to approve this. But anyway, the idea is they were Brahma, and they make the wrong choice, and then they enter into the universe, and when the universe is destroyed, they go back to the transcendental body of Vishnu, and then when the next living entity comes and he's Brahma, all these living entities, they get their chance to enter again in the universe, and according to their piety, they get different positions. They can get the position of Manu, of a big demigod, of a small demigod, of something which is like a human being, or something which is a little bit more than a human being, like Kim Purusha or all these living entities. Or if they have more like serious demonic tendencies, they go down under the earthly planets, and so on and so on. Maharaj wanted to say something.
Well, you went on and answered the question the way I would have, but oftentimes people even ask the idea, well, there are more people alive now than were alive, in Krishna's time, so where have all these extra souls come from? Sometimes people ask those kind of questions. But
where are the dinosaurs?
We know that Mahavishnu is like the reservoir of living entities. So it's quite common that at the end of a universe, there's still people who have never turned in their test papers yet. They've they're still truant from the class. So they don't graduate. So what happens to them is they go to sleep within the body of Mahavishnu, and this is the mystery of the Brahma Jyoti too. So when Brahma creates again, he sets up the mechanism by which the living entities can accept various bodies. But ultimately, as we were hearing from Tulasi, that according to their karma, they take a particular body. So they, in a previous lifetime of Brahma, they didn't make the grade, or in a previous day of Brahma, they didn't make the grade. I read somewhere that when you hang on to your position in the material universe through an entire lifetime of Brahma, at least you get the benediction of having your karma expunged to some extent when you sort of start off with a more or less clean slate. However, your material desires are not removed, and that's why you quickly muddy up your karma again. So that's why we tend to not make it out of the material universe. And so this Mahavishnu, or also I think alternatively on the day of Brahma, maybe it's Garbha Vishnu that they go into, because all the universes haven't been destroyed. Just the middle planetary systems have been destroyed because of a partial annihilation or a pralaya. So at a partial annihilation, maybe they go into Mahavishnu, maybe they go into Garbha Vishnu, but at any rate, they're also inert during the time of his sleeping. And then when he wakes up again, when Brahma creates either his next day or Brahma creates for the first time, when he's newly created, newly minted Brahma, again, they pull from that reservoir of countless living entities who are then incarnated into a particular role in the material world. It seems to me like at the beginning of the universe, at the very beginning of the universe, mostly you have very mode of goodness beings. So obviously at that time, most people with most karma are not qualified to take any of those roles. Only certain rare people are. And then, later on, when we start getting into the expansion of the various yugas and we get into Kali Yuga, in Kali Yuga, then you've got practically open house. Then anyone can come and take a birth there, because in Kali Yuga, no holds barred, and we're down and dirty at that time, so it's a big party for all those people who were serious about ignoring the Supreme Lord. And we also find out that since you have so many demigods and so many important positions in the universe, if there's no qualified living entity at the right stratum of karma to take that role, the Supreme himself takes that role and fills out the missing tooth in that particular phalanx. And so that's also there.
Batanga Prabhu.
You said in the beginning of the lecture that, I don't remember the words exactly, that spiritual world is mostly better than the material world, something like this.
Yes.
Or what is there in the material world that could be better than the spirit? If it's not entirely, but mostly.
I said mostly because I remembered that sometimes on a lectures I heard from a senior devotees that there is something that you don't find in the spiritual world. And this is the opportunity for preaching. Opportunity for preaching, because in the spiritual world everybody is devotee, so why you have to preach Of course, Harinam festivals are there, constant chanting of the holy name is there, discussing Bhagavatam, the pastimes, if Krishna is there. But the taste that you can get from going to some living entity, which is from time immemorial in illusion, and telling him about Krishna and see how he's changing his life and he's coming back to Krishna, this special taste you can experience here. This is what I heard. So from this perspective only. Otherwise, everything else is crap, as they say.
So one can even desire to stay eternally in the material world to get always this taste from preaching the glories of Krishna.
Well, I remember one lecture of Srila Prabhupada. He's saying the great devotees, very elevated devotees, they don't care where are they. Tulayama, Lavena, Pina, Svarga, punarbhavan. If they are in heaven or they are in hell, they don't care because they just want to serve Krishna. So their way of praying is, my dear Lord, wherever you put me, I will just serve you, no problem. But then Srila Prabhupada is saying, but we are not great devotees. We are not great devotees. We want strongly to go back to the spiritual world. So for us it's very healthy to cultivate gradually this strong desire to go back to Krishna, to the spiritual world. And then once we are there, once we get our green card, like Vaikuntha card, then no problem, we can always come for a vacation shortly. Just visit for 1-2 weeks, do some preaching, this and that. But then I have my visa, like eternal visa, I can always go back to the spiritual world. Otherwise it's a little bit dangerous for us to try to cultivate this idea that, well, here there is something which is even better than the spiritual, so let me just stay here. It's not very healthy we are still sick, so it's not sure if we want this just to benefit the others, the fallen conditioned souls, or we want this just because we are very much attached to the material situation that we are in.
So it's not selfish to desire to go back to the spiritual world.
It's okay. Yes. It's bona fide spiritual desire.
To go back to God is basically the goal of our philosophy. But again, as he was saying, there's a higher aspiration for those who are beyond. But also, the material world is the only place where Krishna can, deal with demons. There are no demons in the spiritual world. So Krishna comes here because he has the opportunity to fight with demons. And we have the story that's mentioned in the Madhurya Kadambini about Jai and Vijay, that Jai and Vijay looked over the material world and they said, we can understand that the Supreme Lord is eager for a fight in the material world. But we have examined all the demons and there's no good demons. So we volunteer to take the role we volunteer to help the Lord in this pastime if he so desires. We are not demons, but at the same time we cannot bear that the Supreme Lord's desire goes unfulfilled in any extent. So they make this prayer, and that's when the 4 Kumaras come and they get cursed and they go to become... So it's interesting. And so we see that sometimes when there's, pooper time demons in the material world, devotees take the role of demons. So, and Prabhupada says that not every Jai and Vijay, not every Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha are a Jai or Vijay. Some demons are genuine demons, so you have that as well.
Thank you, Maharaj. Okay. On this auspicious note, grant our Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki, Śrīla Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki, Nitai Gaura Premanandi.